Oh, so let me just sort of kick off the agenda for today. So this is a session that's been done several times in various user groups. It's absolutely amazing session. But what we've done here is we've broken down the session over 3 individual parts. So Matt's going to walk us through the operator for Kubernetes, get us all excited, show us some of the magic. And then we're going to go between now and next month into looking at the GitHub, into our Slack channel. And we're going to do a bit of maybe, kind of like Splunk Club, if you will, Study Club. We'll kind of work it out together. People can have a play. And then we'll come back on the 20th of May for a second user group. And then we bring it all together. Yeah. So observe, enjoy today, go and do for the next few weeks. And then we come back and we sort of reinforce that learning, reinforce that knowledge. It's going to be awesome. So that's the link here to the Slack channel we have, and there's the long version of it as well. I'll throw these out to everybody after the call as well. And also just to mention that we have Splunk B-Sides kicking off next week, and we have 20+ speakers over 2 days, Mondays and Tuesdays. That is the registration link. SplunkTrust is, B-Sides is kind of a SplunkTrust initiative, and it's really, really technical talks, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. So have a look at that registration page. And then also myself and Suman are going to be doing a talk as well on AWS and how you can sort of use that as a really good learning tool for not a lot of money. So just to mention as well that today's session is a joint session between the Splunk User Group London, that's led by myself and Oliver Hoppy, and it's with Suman as well from the Fort Worth User Group. So it's brilliant that, in this day and age, we can collaborate across continent to get some good stuff out to the community. And then just to put in your diaries, guys, for May the 20th is our coming back session. Yeah, so let's have today. Let's go do some kicking it around for the next month. And let's have our user group session coming up on May the 20th. Now, I think that's enough said. I'm going to hand you over to the person who doesn't need any introduction in the Splunk community, somebody that we absolutely adore and love around this world. Matt, take it away, sir.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Lee, and thanks for everyone for joining. I've brought friends as well, so a big shout out to some of them among us that are the real heroes of getting some of this stuff done and actually coming to real life. So my name is Matt Modestino. I'm a staff consulting sales engineer these days, although I've been at Splunk for 5 years and worn a few different hats. I like to just wear the one that Aleem has at heart for sure while I work at Splunk. So I come back to the field after working in some of the IT market and product teams for a little while. So one of the things that I've kind of that's been near and dear to my heart, as folks will know in the Slack, is I get chirped about being the guy that's always talking about Kubernetes for the last couple of years. We're basically here to just show you where we've come. We've actually been able to GA the Splunk Operator for Kubernetes, and so we want as much feedback and people to check it out. It's become a real child. So I'm going to walk you through a bunch of it. But before I do that, like I said, I brought some friends, and so I brought Patrick Ogden, who is a principal product manager at Splunk, who is also, who I have been kind of slacking and randomly talking to in the ear of, along with Arjun and some of the other team. Gaurav, I can see him here. If there's others, I know there's a lot of folks in here. So they're definitely some of the Splunk team here, but I'm going to pass over to Patrick for a little bit, because as the product owner, I told him he could give you guys a little bit of, the Splunk spiel. And then once Patrick's done, I'm just going to, again, cover what was well received over the last year or two. I have a few repos that span the last year or two as the operator has kind of progressed from, a sparkle in Matty Mo's rants on Slack to now a real thing. So so Patrick, do you want to take it away, give him a little taste, and then I can pick it up after you?
Yeah, that sounds good, Matt. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, my name is Patrick Ogden. I'm a product manager with Splunk. I've been with Splunk since 2008. I've worked on a variety of different platform features that hopefully are somewhat well received within the community. Like I actually worked with Octavio on the monitoring console. I was the first product manager on that. Did some work on the search head clustering and a variety of other things through the years. So I have a decent amount of history with how the product has evolved and sort of how we manage it and administer it. And obviously you all are kind of key to, you know, getting us feedback and sort of shepherding the community around, you know, real world Splunk deployments. So I think I've definitely talked to a variety of folks from user groups and obviously from the crew before. So thanks again for being such enthusiastic participants. And I really appreciate you giving me the time in this forum. Yeah, I'm going to kind of tell you a story. I'm going to let Matt spend most of the time actually showing you what we've built. But I think it's kind of interesting to talk a little bit about kind of how we got to where we are today. So let me just share a couple of slides with you. I promise I won't beat us to death with the slides. Yeah, so we've actually been using containers at Splunk for quite a while now, mostly as a part of our CI/CD process. So every time that we put out a Splunk Enterprise release, or actually even a cloud release these days, anytime we submit code into sort of the develop branch for Splunk Enterprise, and obviously I think a lot of other of the app teams and other feature teams follow the same pattern as well, it actually spawns up a bunch of containers that test Splunk in a variety of fashions, either in single instance deployments if it's necessary, or obviously if we were, you know, changing code that had something to do with indexer clustering, search head clustering, one of those pieces, we, you know, build a distributed environment, build a search head cluster, do some tests against it, tear it down, give the containers back to the system, and then, you know, and then the resources are used pretty efficiently. So I had been working on this actually as an internal project for quite a while, and myself and there was another gentleman who was kind of instrumental to this, named Mike Dickey, who also was really the architect behind how we could pull off a more efficient CI/CD pipeline internal to Splunk, you know, using containers and using container orchestration. And actually back in those days, there wasn't really sort of the momentum behind Kubernetes yet. I mean, there was, as there still is, you know, there's Rancher, Docker Enterprise. In fact, our earliest internal clusters were all actually running on Docker UCP or Docker Enterprise, and actually a lot of them still run on that to this day. So sorry, let me get rid of my.
This would have been like 2015, 16, 17 for timeline, right? Even for, maybe earlier too, right?
Yeah,
for,
exactly.
For context for folks here, because they've been, you know, like a lot of you've been kicking around even longer than I have. But not Patrick. I don't know about Patrick, but definitely, you know, longer than I have. But it's good to, you know, thinking back to those times where, yeah, thinking about where Docker was the thing. Google hadn't even given it to the CNCF yet, right? So it's cool to think about it back in the time frame. So
yeah, so. There was, you know, a lot of, you know, we put a Docker container out there and we put it out to the world. That's been out there for, you know, several years now. But how people built larger systems using containers was still kind of up in the air. You know, I think Apache had an effort, and, you know, there wasn't really this momentum yet. But, you know, I think a couple of years ago, it started becoming pretty clear that the Kubernetes was going to be. I think I saw some statistic the other day that for, you know, containerized environments in customer deployments these days, it's like greater than half are running Kubernetes. So I think the market has definitely spoken, and, you know, now that actually gave us a little bit more confidence in moving forward with, okay, if this is the given path, then let's, you know, spend some time understanding what we would need to do to get Splunk Enterprise working properly in these environments. And so that gave rise to a couple of things. So obviously, to be able to build distributed clusters in our own environment rapidly and then tear them down, we had to build some automation, because that just doesn't happen magically, as you all know. I'm sure, you know, within your own organization, you've probably either had to write Puppet or Chef or Ansible or Salt or whatever it is, you know, that somebody would use to, if you wanted to build anything in an automated fashion. Well, we had to do the same thing internally, and we started putting stuff out into the, into the general public a couple of years ago. And that actually, if you look on GitHub, it's Splunk Ansible and Docker Splunk are kind of the core components that we rely upon, at least in the operator world, to do what we do, at least at setup phase, right? I think these days we are sort of, there's the setup phase and getting sort of the Splunk environment set up, and then there's kind of the run phase, like the day 2 operations phase. We still rely on Ansible for the day 1 phase, and then day 2 phases, we may actually be doing stuff in operator, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So, I mean, there's definitely challenges that, Splunk's has been around for almost 20 years now. And obviously we originally were running on bare metal and VMs and, all kinds of other environments. I mean, I even remember, this is how old I am, we used to support running Splunk Enterprise on HPUX and AIX and Solaris, actually. So we've been on a variety of platforms over the years, and obviously had different challenges on some of those, and I think most notably is, as you all are keenly aware, is that Splunk, at least at the indexer tier and at the search head tier sometimes, is a resource intensive application, right? It requires decent IO, requires decent disk. I remember going back through the SSD, SATA, spinning media battles and all the stuff that we've gone back with, and IOPS and Bonnie and all this stuff over the years. This is, by the way, I'm seeing these things pop up for admitting people into the room. Someone else is admitting them, right? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I wasn't like, no, you cannot come in. No, you cannot come in. Okay, cool. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing is, Kubernetes was really built as a microservice application, and it wasn't really, natively designed to have persistent storage and sort of do database-like things like Splunk was. And it's funny because then sort of the community, the CNCF community, started dragging it more in that direction, recognizing that there were going to have to be stateful applications that ran on Kubernetes, and maybe, as in the Splunk world, maybe there's some things that are really stateful, like the indexers are still stateful to a certain degree, and then there's other things that maybe don't need to be as stateful that we could engineer around and have a little bit more ephemeral. But obviously, we put this stuff out there, this automation that we built, and a lot of it was frankly because we're concerned that if we just released the hounds and said, okay, take your Docker Splunk container and you can choose whatever you want to build your searchlight cluster, index cluster, and getting them talking together. I mean, that's hard enough to not to do in a bare metal in a VM environment. I think we were concerned that just turning that automation loose on the community, while I'm sure people would figure it out, it would become a supportability nightmare for us, right? We'd be down troubleshooting Ansible and doing all kinds of other crazy stuff. So we had to sort of standardize at some point, just to keep our own sanity, quite frankly. And then there's some other things about Splunk, just the way that, obviously the way that we interact with some of the deployment components and, cluster managers and search cluster deployers and deployment servers and all that stuff, where it's a little bit complicated considering we are very reliant on a file system based, management, whereas, you would hope that things have evolved, that, it's things in the sort of cloud native space are maybe more KPI based, more than file system based, and some other things. So there's obviously just some challenges, but I think that we have we're trying to engineer around those challenges and then leverage new features within the platform where it makes sense to make running on the Kubernetes platform as painless and actually as beneficial as possible. I think that's the main story here. So an operator is just it's basically, think of it as a Splunk admin in a box, right? So we have tried to take sort of our best practices around, if you're doing, X operation on the indexer tier, if we could remove some of that and hard code it either in Ansible or hard code it into actually the operator Go code, that's what we've done. And we've exposed I guess, the different components of the Splunk stack as what we call custom resource definitions. And these are just extensions of Kubernetes. And that's what the operator framework gives us. It's, everybody always asks, like, well, why, do you have Helm charts? Do you have why operator versus Helm? And really the thing is Helm gets us to a place where we can set things up very quickly. Operators actually give us sort of better day two administrative experiences that I think that, we figured get the operator stuff done first, and then maybe we'll look at, Helm and doing the setup and making that easier sort of as round two. But, just at least in the alpha release, which if anyone was following along over the last year and a half as we started putting some of the stuff out there on GitHub, taking what we had already built for ourselves internally and adding the custom resource definitions and some other things in, even back in the summer, last summer, even before we released the beta, the alpha version of the operator actually did some pretty cool stuff. We could build distributed Splunk environments pretty rapidly. We try to mirror as close as possible to the validated architectures. And we had put out custom resource definitions as it would make sense for the different tiers for search head clustering, indexer clustering, a license master, license manager, and we actually have started adding even more onto that, which I'll get to in a second. We had basic methods for app install, and that's actually something that we're currently continuing to work on. But even with the alpha version and even into the GA release, there's a couple of different options for either taking a config map within Kubernetes or just giving the custom resource definition a URL, and sort of us doing the right thing by, if it's a search head cluster, we put it in the search head deployer, the search head cluster deployer in the right place, and then actually push it out into the running cluster in an automated fashion. So it actually works pretty well. And like I said, I'll talk a little bit maybe towards the end just about some of the stuff we're thinking about for the next iteration of this. Obviously, one of the big benefits here is the scale up and scale down operation. We do, and I'll mention this a little bit later too, is we do require Smart Store as a feature to be enabled in the operator environment when we're running under Kubernetes, just because the scale up down operation without Smart Store, as I'm sure you can probably imagine, gets extremely painful with lots and lots of local disk. Plus, it hews more closely towards the cloud native, move as much storage away from the sort of compute as possible. So I think we're really tightly aligned with Smart Store in that capacity. And the alpha even gave a bunch of document examples that we were able to share on the GitHub page. So back in October, we started actually chugging right along. We were doing more and more development through the fall and into the winter. Some really cool stuff that we added even in the beta code that you may have evaluated or may have seen out on the GitHub page. So as I mentioned at the outset, I was the original product manager for Monitoring Console, and we were consistently scratching our head on how could we make this table, this asset table of indexers, search heads, license managers, all these other things that we were trying to keep tabs on, a more automated setup and sort of not only the out of the box setup, but also as things change or you add an index or you add a search head, how do we acquire that and put it in the asset table? And that kind of got shelved for a couple of years just because I don't think anybody honestly had a good sort of native inside Splunk answer for it, especially given the deployment complexities of things that we were seeing. Well, the operator and the Kubernetes platform, because it is declarative, the way that we say, I want you to make a cluster and I want you to connect these components together and I want it to look like this, as I'm sure Matt will show you in some of the YAML and the examples, we had an opportunity now to go ahead and, sort of fix that problem to a certain degree and automate that asset table. And actually Kriti, who's on the call today, one of the developers, did a fantastic job in tackling that problem and trying to figure out how we automate the coming and going of containers and pods within the cluster. And that's something that you can check out, could have checked out in the beta and can actually check out in the general available version today. The other kind of cool couple of things that we did as it related to the beta was we had lots of customers that were early adopters that were very interested in using the operator, using Splunk and Kubernetes, tell us that it actually absolutely had to support multi-site. And we actually worked collaboratively with a customer of ours in France. And obviously we're the pull request approvers, and we review the code and we write tests and all this kind of stuff. But we work collaboratively with one of our customers that submitted code. That's the nice part of this of being an open source project, is that if there's something that you don't like or wish was there as a feature, and a little bit of Go, you can get in there and actually get your hands dirty. So we're very excited about sort of this next version or next iteration of working with the community to actually, build stuff. It's kind of cool after spending so many years kind of behind the wall of everything that we had to build. We get customer input, of course, but now we're actually physically writing code with our customers and testing it. And multi-site was one of the big things that they had requested. I did mention Smart Store. We do have some methods that you can automate the deployment of Smart Store kind of out of the box with the custom resource definition. And we also did some very cool stuff about centrally managing passwords using Kubernetes passwords and secrets, such that we don't have to worry about inconsistent pass-through SIM keys and all kinds of other things and administrative passwords when we're talking about sort of the cluster holistically. So some very good work done by the development team. In fact, once again, several of the folks on the call today actually contributed here to the code. Gaurav and Arjun are on as well. So folks on the actual development team.
Wow.
So for the general available product that we actually just launched last week, we worked with about 10 beta customers across the world, I guess I would say, the virtual world now that we Zoom everywhere. At a couple of customers in Australia, several in the US, as I mentioned, one in France, a couple in England. And it was great. We had extremely engaged beta customers, very enthusiastic. People took it really seriously, really put the operator sort of through the ringer, which is great because, I mean, the thing that we really wanted to know is what were the challenges that customers would encounter if they actually took this thing and tried to move their production Splunk environment or a portion of their production Splunk environment to it today. And I think that was really kind of the feedback that we were looking for and finding out sort of where those gaps were, so we can start thinking about, how we prioritize various things within development team to fix some of those gaps. But we did a lot of good documentation, research, testing. There was, performance testing, obviously, that took place. We ran it through, sort of had to modify our own system test framework to do some stuff, because now that we're running on Kubernetes, not our old containerized platform, it looks a little bit different. But out of that came some really good stuff. I think if anybody has dipped their toe into Kubernetes and worked with this, a lot of the stuff that you sort of used to be out of the purview of the administrator sort of now becomes relevant. Like if I need a load balancer, I just, I don't necessarily go talk to the network team or go talk to the F5 guy. I actually have to worry about some of that as it relates to either getting data into the Splunk environment or even accessing Splunk Web, right? I mean, there's, quick and easy ways to do some of the stuff, but if you're actually going to do this for really real, you need to use an ingress service like Nginx or Istio. And we wanted to make sure that we were familiar with it enough that we could guide customers as they asked us to a certain degree. Some of these things, unfortunately, there's just so many of these things out there right now that, we try to pick the couple that are most familiar in the general population, and then sort of get sharp on those. And then I'm sure Matt will show you some other stuff as it relates to the ingress service as well during some of the demos. The other big thing was, it's like, well, how are we going to handle hardware resource requirements in Kubernetes? Because it's totally different, right? And we spent some time sort of thinking about that and doing some testing. And I guess the short answer here is it looks pretty much like you would if you were running it on bare metal or in a VM, right? a CPU core is a CPU core. We still, as a resource-intensive application, we still need a decent performant disk. We still need enough cores to service the indexing and search workload. It's just now it works a little bit differently with the way that, that Kubernetes actually has resource limits and requests, and we've got some good documentation about there on how to guarantee quality of service in your Splunk environment. We did have to go through a pretty extensive security documentation, just because there's a lot of different, if most of these environments are going to be outside public face, when we have a lot of our sort of early adopters and also our beta customers that are running in Amazon's EKS or GKE or Microsoft Azure's AKS service. And these things are obviously closer to the outside world, and we have to make sure that we are properly securing and documenting that. The other thing that I'll mention on here as well is just we added, actually at the request of one of our customers in the beta, the way that the operator comes up, it asks for, it says, hey, I need some storage, I need some exe storage, and I need some var storage, right? I need comp storage, and I need, a Splunk DB storage. We allowed to, if you wanted to put the comp stuff on different disks than maybe the database stuff, var and etse can be split up. So we added some actually cool incremental features as we went through the beta process as well. So that's pretty much it for me as far as just sort of what it is, how we got to where we are, and sort of where we set today with the operator. It's as I think that this session, Matt's going to show you some really cool stuff, and then I would encourage you to actually, go check it out on GitHub. And I mean, you can demo this thing on your laptop with Docker Desktop, or I think Matt's going to use K3s. And there's a variety of ways to sort of, start getting your feet wet with some of these technologies, rather than needing to get an Amazon account and spin up an EKS cluster or do something crazy like that. So it's all good. We're very excited about the prospects for this and making it the administrative experience within Splunk, and growing and shrinking Splunk, and then doing some other stuff when it comes to app management and how we manage content easier too. So we're very excited about the prospects here.
Thanks, Patrick.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Patrick. And again, if anybody has any questions or anything, I am going to jump into a few things. But again, the funny part about it is we've done a lot of hard work to make the demo super boring, which means that it runs, it does what you think it's going to do. And really what I want to make sure we help you with is, like Patrick said, is we're here for you to actually get out there and try it. I think I've set it up in a couple of different ways. I'll show you that is very accessible, because I think the first thing anybody does is has a bill shock moment sometimes when they're like, yeah, I'm gonna go learn this whole thing, I'm gonna go set up this big cluster, and a couple of weeks later, it's you realize that having something that's quick and easy to deploy for a SME or learning, or to get your feet wet, will really drive the adoption of the community ultimately. So yeah, I'm going to show you some stuff, but any questions off the top for Patrick? Again, thanks to Patrick and a bunch of the teammates. We could see some of them are here. If there's any quick questions, and I know you want to see something to ask better questions, but if anything hops off the top of your mind, or if you have been watching it over the last little while, if there's anything you want before I kind of jump in, feel free to chime in now. So I'll give you a break, a moment before we continue.
There was a question in the chat just about sort of performance comparisons, and I'll just call it out real quick. The neat thing here is, like, especially in Amazon and Azure and a bunch of these other things where people are already running workloads, the Kubernetes worker nodes are actually the same EC2 instances that people are sort of know and love as it relates to maybe their Amazon non-containerized or non-Kubernetes deployments. And actually, we see pretty much equivalent from our own internal testing. We see pretty much equivalent performance. I mean, and in fact, believe it or not, in some cases, a little bit better performance, not dramatically better, but about the same performance when we're running containerized. The neat thing here is that as we get more chances to test more, I guess, scenarios, one of the things that we're kind of interested in is, we encounter these customers that have really, really big boxes, like, 96 core boxes. And I think we all know that, a single Splunk D, I don't care how many searches you throw at it, how much indexing you do with it, it's never going to take 96 cores, right? So I think what we're kind of interested in is bin packing indexers, having multiple indexer containers on the same big piece of hardware. And as long as we have the storage throughput and bandwidth, that we can potentially do that and use the actual hardware more efficiently. So
makes me laugh thinking back to when I would get cut eye from support team when someone would invariably ask how to run multiple Splunks on one Linux box, right? Or
yeah, and we did it.
Pipelines.
And we did it, right? I mean, we allowed it for many years. We had customers with larger machines that would do that kind of stuff, and it works. But I think this is better things. The resource management is more isolated, and this is probably the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions off the top of the head, or any things we can talk about? Because I know, again, like I said, I'm going to show it to you, and hopefully I'll be available in the Slack chat. No pressure tonight. I know it's late in some places, even for us. Patrick and I are on the East Coast, some of the Splunk teams on the West Coast, but this is like, I love the session build up, right? Is that we have the next couple of months, or a month, 30 days, whatever, and I'll be around. So like, no pressure to like write notes. So how do I catch up? How do I learn this thing? But I definitely going to show you around a little bit. But any other questions before Matty Mo gets talking? Because once I start talking, it's hard to stop it.
And Matt, look, we'll have the video available for everybody to watch tomorrow as well.
Excellent. And actually, as I'm going to refer back to a couple of previous demos, which again covered, I love how Patrick went through the timeline, because if you go back, you could see we did a Pune user group in January when this was getting really close. In October, we did one in Boston. And if you go back through the user groups, look for my goofy face, you'll see that it's been progressing. So there's some things that I'll be able to share to make your life easier. Because again, I don't want you to like feel like, remember, this is not because we think that Splunk admins need to go learn a bunch of technology. It's actually the reverse. And I know that's hard to let go of, especially in Splunk admin days, from where we've all come from, of knowing like the intricacies of like every little moving piece. But I think really what is exciting about this is just, even as someone who's gone through, Splunk consultant training and knows what it takes to wire up these things, it's just exciting to blow past that and make it boring and get to the cooler stuff, the dashboardings, the outcomes are really what we have to be focusing on, right? So, and again, remember, trying to just run things that are reliable, like repeatable, things that, you're a Splunk consultant. If you walk into any Splunk admin's, den, if they're not running cloud for the next 5 years, hopefully you can, raise a glass to Patrick and the team and Matty Mo for saying, yeah, like if this wasn't how we ran it, and I would have no idea how this thing runs. And I'm sure that sounds pretty familiar to how it runs, because that's what I face every day, right? As someone who helps users every single day, you never know what you're going to find, which is fun. But, I think I gave my last hair to that fun. So maybe make it boring a little bit and focus on some of the outcomes. So anyway, I'm going to stop babbling, but if anyone has any other questions, don't be shy, just reach out, or, just shout out. Okay. So I'm glad that Patrick went over the timeline. I'm going to share my screen here and pick up kind of where he's left us. And so what has he done? What has he done? And so let's see what we've done. So all of this that we're talking about today, I've created a GitLab, a personal GitLab repo for everything we're going to cover today. So just sit back and relax. Don't worry, everything. And again, I'll be updating this tonight and just making sure there's no holes in it. But what we're going to do is we're going to cover just a real quick getting started. Like, where do I even start with this? Patrick talked about a lot of things that I might only know by name through, tech Twitter, or from hearing it, in Slack chats here and there for folks that are using it. So I set it up in a way that we're going to just set the table. What is it that we're talking about? What have we been talking about for the last 30 minutes, right? What pieces or components do I need to try it to get started? And then join in. I mean, again, on the Slack chat, we can join in if anybody tries these and runs into errors or whatever. So what is the operator then? So the operator at its most fundamental thing is a Docker container. It's a Go program written in a Docker container that, like Patrick said, we're codifying the things that human operators would normally be relied upon to do when you read the Splunk docs. Okay, and so what that container does is it runs in a cluster, and that container becomes your, you know, like your API to the Splunk world, right? And through this container, you will ask for resources, you will be able to view resources, and ultimately deploy and manage your resources. And so in my previous talks that you can go back and look at, and they're still valid, like little settings might change here and there, but like I said, I can help you in the Slack chat if you run into an error or something. But all the kind of demos we've done up until now, what I do is I bring you into my lab. So welcome to my lab. And so I'll put this aside. I'm gonna actually, here's the link. And again, just squirrel it away for now. Let me go dump it in the Slack chat as well as in the Zoom chat. And again, just bookmark it for later. I'll be working on it for the rest of the night later, just to make sure it's bulletproof and has all the goodies in it that we end up talking about today. And what is in there, what you're going to find in there, and sorry, I don't know if you can even see that screen, so I should just make sure I stay in there. I mean, you know what, we're all friends here. I don't think I've got everything closed. I'm just going to share everything because I'll bounce around a lot. Let's just close the company secret sauce, you know, and all the NDA stuff. All right, so let's just share screen. Okay, so the way I like to work, and Arjun and team actually did a great job of making some slides that were prettier than the ones that I did last time. So I'm glad. So again, remember, why we have to be better, and you know, not that we have to be better. Splunkers always maybe piss people off because we ask why too much, but basically, like, why are we doing this again? Like, why do we have to do this thing? And again, remember, just trying to hit the big main theme of, as someone who's been watching this technology for a couple of years as a Splunker, as a network, you know, person at trade, the reduction of toil. Like, remember, it's going to come back to that ability to get started, whether I've just found Splunk for the first time in 2021, and make it feel like it's software that can run in 2021, even though we all know it was born 20 years ago, right? And again, there's also some things, amazing things that this project has brought about that are only possible because we expand outside of the realm of what's possible in Splunk T. Okay. So anyway, again, big items. Deploy containerized Splunk at scale. Remember, this is a cool thing, and it's cool to be able to demo it and run it as a developer, but this is meant for real data centers, right? This, people kind of get it twisted. They hear Kubernetes and they automatically have been drowned to think, oh, that's for developers. But really, no, this is just how the data center runs now, my friends. You know, you walk into any new data center, any net new cap spend or anything that's being built now is just, you know, this is the first thing they look at. Not everything. I'm not saying everything, but I'm saying it's, if you have, it's almost one of those things where you walk into a new data center. Hey, you have a Kubernetes control plane? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, then that makes my life easier. I can just use this, right? I can follow this spec'd out deployment that Splunk supports. And so before I go any further, yes, for all of you that have been around, if you go, and this is like the measure at Splunk and your impact on products is, but are you in the actual docs? Like, is everything you're talking about in the actual documentations? And so what you'll see is under containerized computing platforms, where we kind of had a gaping hole before, where we kind of said, hey, here's a Docker container, but that's it. Now what we're doing is, you know, now you have a Kubernetes option, which is what essentially people were asking for when they weren't asking for a Docker container, like Patrick said. They were asking about, how do I orchestrate a massive Splunk deployment? And that's a different thing than, hey, here's a Docker container, right? But it's all built on said Docker container. So again, like I said, this is not, I'm going to walk through this right now, but again, just trying to avoid 20,000 different Splunk customers writing the same automation, right? Like 20,000 different customers having the same human learn the same best practice, you know, through, you know, human vocabulary instead of just code, right? And that's an interesting thing, I think, that we'll see as we continue. So anyway, to get to the lab, I'm going to show off my lab and where I run for this stuff and kind of share what I do with it. Again, I want to walk everybody off the ledge. It's not that big of a deal what we're doing here. However, what it is it builds on, it's little steps that lead to big things, right? So You have a node that'll be, your Linux, node that would run just as if Kubernetes was never born, right? It's just you got your bare compute. Then you have a container runtime. Now, Docker, we talk about Docker because that's the one people know, like it's the Kleenex, at least for now. In reality, there's actually multiple container engines, and the one I'm going to show you today is not Docker at all. But again, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's just, this becomes deployment details that you would never care about. And so the container is where that Docker image sits. So this is where Docker Splunk comes in, right? And then, so, the Docker image gives us this image, and inside that Docker image is the logic that we built to make it feel automated, which is actually Ansible. That doesn't mean you need to know Ansible at all, but if you like to poke around and you want to get involved, you can actually absolutely make this container do backflips if you know how to write Ansible jobs. Because as the container starts up, we even give you places where you can slip in your own Ansible jobs, where you could actually get some feature or behavior that we didn't write for, or we would never know about because we don't run in your environment, and you could actually slide it in front of all the code that we've built, which is really awesome. And honestly, like over the last 2 years, where we've had customers that have kind of gone out on the bleeding edge, like Patrick said, and ran this even though we didn't GA it. When I say this, I mean they took what we had and they took it even further, like they took it 10 miles further. And so this was one of the big things that allowed us to do that, allowed us to take care of the easy kind of day 1, day 2 stuff. And when they were comfortable with that, they could slide in and do a bunch of crazy custom stuff. So I wanted to point that out because people might also look at stuff like this and think that you'll have less flexibility, but in reality, it's more flexibility than you would ever want, right? So any questions on just Docker Splunk, the Docker image? Like, it's a Docker image. Yes, it has Ansible in there, but you don't really have to care about that. That's just there to give you environment variables. So like when you put in an environment variable, that maps to an Ansible task that will actually make that so in the background. Okay. And I'll pause for a minute. And while I'm pausing, I'll just show you that those 2 projects live on their own, right? So Splunk Ansible and Splunk Docker Splunk. So like if I open another one here, oops. So the Splunk Ansible repo is the modular piece that is just Splunk Ansible. Do you have to run it in Docker? Absolutely not. Right? You could go run it on, you could take it outside of the container, do whatever you want with it, but it's not made like a traditional Ansible, like command and control. I have this one place that goes out and controls all the machines. The Ansible is actually self-contained. So you put it on a host, you give it the environment variable, it runs it on that host. It's not really meant to be orchestrated like in the traditional sense, although you probably could wire it up, but that's really wasn't the genesis, right? And by the way, shout out to SplunkTrust and Mason and team, some of the Splunk IT team. There, if you want more traditional Ansible roles or things of that for a more like traditional Splunk environment, we do have those too, by the way. Of course, Splunk has one of everything, right? so I'll just pause there, let that soak in. But sorry, what I was really just trying to show you, and as I more succinctly did on the repo, is that the Docker Splunk project was born, like the only reason we can do the operator is because of Docker Splunk, and the only reason Docker Splunk exists because of Splunk Ansible. I guess that's what I can leave it at, right? And so I guess more succinctly, what I was trying to show you is, as I noted here, is that at the end of the day, what this is just building upon these items, right? Splunk Enterprise wrapped in Ansible, wrapped in Docker, and now unlocked us the ability to build something in Kubernetes. Okay. Okay, let me go here. Let's get into it. Let's have a look at it. So I'll show off some of my lab and show you what I've done with it. I've actually run the operator as my own Splunk instance for actually almost 2 years now. Actually since 0.1.0. Like like Patrick said, Mike Dickey was great at giving me. He gave me enough to make me go away. Which is a smart thing. He's a smart guy, and so did Patrick and team. So that's how they survive dealing with a guy like me. But basically, let's just jump into it. So what I'm going to show you is my actual lab, just to set the stage and to make sure we don't lose anybody. again, I just really wanted to take that moment to tell you guys that there are these major rocks of technology involved here. You are not, the idea is that you start at the back and can go down the rabbit hole if you like, right? But we've tried to make it so that the operator can hide and shield you from all that stuff until you really need it, okay? So let's go through the release. Let's go through the GA release, and I'll show you my lab as we're going through it to make it a little bit more fun. So inside the repo that I've got here for you, I put the notes from the latest release. Again, it's a new world. You know, working in GitHub and working with customers in GitHub has been amazing. Let me get this out here. Like Patrick said, not having to kind of have that traditional working relationship where stuff has to wait, you know, an enterprise deployment cycle. So again, Splunk Operator on the GitHub repo under the Splunk project, this is the code. This is it, right? This is the actual project. And so you'll see we'll be covering the 1.0 GA release today. And so again, lots of great stuff in here for you to get like your feet wet with whether this will meet your requirements. But really where I see this is, if you're even going to consider this as a production solution, well before that, you're going to have to run the gauntlet on the road to prod, as I like to call it, right? And so what I'm going to show you today hopefully will get you started on that road. And does not require you to do things like run a full smart store or like, you know, run 5 different nodes or have a big cluster. Like Patrick said, I'm going to link you back to, hey, look, you could just do this on Docker desktop just to get familiar. And just like old school Splunk, a single node of Splunk is just like a big cluster of Splunk. It's the same binary at the end of the day. And we're going to go through a couple of the kind of flavors that we have. So any questions there? Anybody have a question there? Okay, so this is the GA project. You can see here, you can come through here and see like notes directly to the actual constraints and prerequisites. We can spend some time going through those in a moment, but let me show you some cool stuff first. Really where you're gonna track some of the things that we've been adding, and you're gonna wanna watch this project for releases. And so let me not take it for granted. Like I know a lot of people in the Splunk world as well, they like working in, even for me, like 3 years ago, working in repo first was not a thing, right? Like maybe it wasn't your first reaction. But as we move to more kind of code-based everything, I just want to make people comfortable with this project. So you'll see Splunk Operator, and this is a great place to watch releases. So again, just so you know, this release is what we're going to be playing with today and what maps to the documentation I had alluded to earlier. Let's look at something, right? So here is my actual lab. It's been shown a few different times, but what I am doing here is I am running a Kubernetes node, a single node. Again, yes, you could run big deployments, big, you know, hulking deployments, but again, I think really the key here is just to get familiar and then extrapolate outwards, right? So I literally run a 12 core, you know, 96 gig RAM box. Oh yeah, sorry. I've got to go here for a second. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let me do this. This will give people at least a visual while I'm bouncing around. You don't get lost. Okay, so the lab I'm about to show you right now is actually like a home gamer lab. Like it's like any practitioner's lab, and I really wanted to do that on purpose because again, not everybody has the beauty of being able to roll in and have an AWS account or free credits with a cloud provider. So to get the practitioners and the community into it, I wanted to show you how I really do it at home, you know, without having to pay a cloud provider and just run on a bare metal Ubuntu server. Okay, so this is what the lab I'm about to show you is consisting of. So there's a 12 core 96 gig RAM piece of dumb metal, right, that I run Kubernetes on. I'm running a very easy distribution called Micro K8s, which is great for anyone to start with because you don't really have to learn anything. It's like a binary, you install it and off you run. That's connected. That server is directly connected into a home network that I run. It's like an ASUS cloud, right? And then that's plugged into the internet, right? Like the actual, you know, ISP router. And so, you know, if you go to matimo.io, this is a microservice that runs in that exact same cluster that we're going to sit Splunk down in, right? But it's served to the world as a segregated service, right? Like just a front end for kind of my musings or like our messing around. And then you'll see like mattimo.io/code, which is where I sent you for this user group, is also another whole nother container just running right alongside everything else I'm running. And so hopefully you can see where this starts to get interesting. So what I'm going to do is from my console, I am going to connect to this Linux box here. Sorry, let's use that Lucidchart just to keep my ADD brain from bouncing around. So I'm going to literally shell from my laptop into this node, I'm going to configure this laptop, developer workstation, to talk to the Kubernetes cluster, which is just this Linux box, right? Because we're done with Kubernetes now, right? Like we need to level set with you about Kubernetes, but like when it's done right, you won't even know it's there. It'll just be a Linux box, right? It's just a box that runs stuff for me, right? And so I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna do that. Kubernetes has this idea, because it's API driven, it has this ability for you to talk to remote nodes like an API, right? So if I go back, I'll show you a little trick. I can tell my console how to talk to that particular cluster. Grab export. Because I have keys for multiple clusters, and there's just this little cool command. I put it into the GitHub, don't worry, where you can ad hoc flip context. And there's different ways with kube control, which is the kind of the binary, the command you're going to use to deal with talking to the cluster. But for now, just know that I'm just telling my command line how to talk to that lab node there. And so you'll see like I have this config file called you see it there. So there you go. And now if I go kube control get nodes, there you go. So what have I done here? Well, if we go back to Lucidchart, Mattimo's on his laptop. He wants to show everybody Kubernetes and Splunk Connect for our Splunk Operator for Kubernetes. I have now configured my laptop to talk to a Kubernetes environment, right? And now I'm going to show you around a little bit, and then show you how I upgraded just before this session started. So in Kubernetes, the cool part about it is it unlocks the data center. I can just walk into the data center and be like, show me everything that exists here, right? And the cool part about Kubernetes is it has these little, these custom resources or these resource definitions that allow things to be kind of normalized. So for example, I can just roll in with obviously with the right credentials. I'm the cluster admin in this little role play. I can roll in and say, show me all the things running in this land of compute, right? Whether it's this one node or all these nodes. And so what you'll see here is I have this concept of namespaces. So you could think of these like little different walled gardens of different apps, right? And what I'm going to show you here is this Splunk standalone instance that is currently running because I deployed it with the operator. And that's what's in that GitHub repo, is the steps that you'll basically have the steps to follow exactly what I've done here. And so I'm going to rip it apart a little bit so that you can see what's actually happening. But right now, I've actually brought it to you broken on purpose because I'm going to show you a couple of cool tricks where this doesn't mean Splunk is broken. As I just showed you, Splunk is running just fine. And we're going to go through that in a moment. But as Patrick alluded to here, and I wanted to kind of throw a little bit of extra here for you all, because we have 30 days to play, is it's one thing to get Splunk up and running for your internal use and developers. And then it's another thing to open it up to the entire world, right? And I actually do serve it from my home to the entire world. But because I did this upgrade, I have to go update some configurations. And I thought it might be a cool topic that we'll see if we can get there. I don't know how much, we got like another 30 minutes, right? Or something. So I think we'll be fine, but this is a cool one we can go to with an advanced topic. Okay.
A very quick time check.
Yeah.
In case anybody has to drop, okay? Because this is just absolutely magical. We're going to keep this going. But just on the screen, you can see that, look, today is Matt doing his magic. We're going to have 30 days for us to kick it around. Have a look at the Slack channel we have here on usergroups.splunk.com. We're going to come back here on May 20, and then we're going to take it up. We're going to kind of roll in what we've learned in our 30 days, and we're going to make it all come together on May 20. So just want to cue everybody up for that. So if you do have to drop, fantastic, no problem. We're going to get this video online for everybody tomorrow. Please tell your friends as well. Watch it offline. Get on the Slack channel, do your thing. Matt's going to be around, the team's going to be around. Come back on May 20. And with that said, Matt, back to you, sir.
Yeah, and sorry, just so I respect everyone's time. This is till 5:30 Eastern, right?
What
is it? What what's the time actually allotted for? Just so I, make sure I don't go.
I might have put it down for 60 minutes, but hey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries.
90 minutes, whatever you want to do. Let's do it.
I'm going to go quick. I'm actually going to go really quick here because I knew this, we would cover a lot. So I kind of made the turkey before we ate, right? So, and again, we can play for the whole month, walking everyone through step by step. But really what I wanted to show you here was, again, remember some of the auxiliary benefit. Look, I run a lot of other software. Listen, I love Splunk, and I know we have the disease of trying to do everything in Splunk, right? Of course we do. But I run a lot of software, right? And as you can see in this lab I'm running, not only am I running a Ghost blog, a GitLab instance, Istio, which is a networking item that we're going to go through. I have a Mario pod here that literally plays a JS port of Mario World, Super Mario Brothers, like, important stuff, right? And so what I want to just make sure that I show here as we get quickly kind of wrap up and I show you where you're going to start and where we'll leave you off here is this allows us to, again, just, be the water, deploy easily alongside all the other things that other people do in your enterprise. We're not the only show in town as much as we would like to be, right? And so, again, remember that this isn't Kubernetes because we love Kubernetes. It's because, that's a means to an end for a Splunker being able to walk into a customer's data center and have them up and running very declaratively, very quickly and reliably, okay? So, let me show you what I did here. So I've got all that stuff running, but let's just focus on Splunk namespace called Splunk Dev. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, Kubernetes API, show me the pods that are currently running in the Splunk Dev namespace. And so what you're seeing is the output of when screw it, YOLO, I'll blow it away. Eventually, I'm going to blow it away, but I know we don't have a ton of time. So maybe I won't tempt the gods. But what you're seeing is, I'm going to walk you through how I got to this point and kind of we'll maybe just cut it there and then you guys can try it and we'll see where you get stuck, right? Or if you don't get, or you can see if my lab is so good that you don't get stuck. But let me just show you around quickly because, and then we'll get you out of here. So the cool part about this is this Splunk deployment was done using the configuration in that GitHub repo. And so the two major topics I'm going to cover is one, I created a Docker image for us to use. Now, the Docker image that we're using is the Splunk 8.1.3 Docker image, which you have to use, right? That's what the GA is 8.1.3 image and higher, right? And what I'm actually doing is teasing how you can actually start to touch on some of the things that Patrick talked about in a very basic way, where I'm actually pre-installing some declared apps, some apps that I know I want for sure installed, regardless of what, how many nodes I spin up here, okay? And so I actually created this Docker image and published it so that you don't have to do it, but it's there for you if you need to. Also in the Docker folder, I placed what's called a default.yaml, which for all the Splunk admin nerds out there is how the Ansible play is kind of distilled down. So as you can see here, as I scroll through this, your eyes will widen as a Splunk admin or somebody who's done architecture background, because you'll see many, many, many common configurations that you're, very, very familiar with, setting things at a very cluster level that will allow you to do this declaratively so that every time you spin up a Splunk, you get that kind of custom Splunk you expect, rather than kind of having to lay it down, then lay down your configs on top of it, make sure it works, etc. Okay. Again, don't just let your eyes glaze. I explain everything in the actual walkthrough, but really the Docker folder is just my way of showing you how you can take what Splunk has published as the, the golden image and extend it so that it's not just bare Splunk when you flip it open. Okay. Now, and the docs will all be in here. Again, give me the rest of the evening to just get it straight, and I'll give you guys the big thumbs up on the Slack channel that, yeah, try it, and start hacking away. But the key folder here is the Kubernetes folder. And what's in the Kubernetes folder is what is so magical about this, right? Is that everything about me getting my single standalone Splunk instance running in my personal lab is distilled down to this YAML file, okay? And so the cool part about it is, the reason we deploy that operator into the Kubernetes cluster in the first place is to extend Kubernetes to understand this API, which is, you know, enterprise.splunk.com, right? And so that's where I'll tie it back to the actual project itself. So if we go to Splunk Operator project and you go into the documentation, right? And you go into custom resources, okay? This, and I mean, look, there's a ton of questions. I know you're gonna have a trillion questions being Splunkers. There's a ton of reading for you to do here. And I'm not RTFMing you, but I kind of am, right? You kind of do have to go through here and just trust me, we've covered all the questions that Splunkers and, you know, our biggest customers have come at us with. So definitely have a pass through here, but start here, right? With the README and the custom resources markdown, because really this is where the magic of the operator is. Because we've deployed the operator to the cluster, we now have these new things we can use in the cluster. So for example, if I go to Splunk dev, get standalones, look, Kubernetes understands what I'm talking about. So the standalone logic, the definition, that loose container of a standalone is defined here in the documentation in the Splunk operator. And this is where the magic kind of comes in. So you can see we have custom resources for each of the major functions you would find in a Splunk validated architecture. So, you know, I could do Splunk get indexer cluster, Splunk get search head cluster. And if I had 5 search head clusters, it's going to return me 5 search head clusters, right? Or it's going to show me the one that's being managed by that operator, right? Now I'm going to only focus on the standalone because again, all these items are just extrapolating the same concepts over and over again. Once you have one node, you got 100 nodes basically at this point, right? There is a little bit of a nuance when it comes to like pushing apps into the indexer cluster or pushing apps into the search head cluster, but the nuances are the ones you already know. Basically, you tell the operator where the app is, the operator takes the app, puts it into master apps, throws it out, tickles the same API endpoint you're going to, right? If it's going to the indexer cluster, same thing, right? Master apps or deployer, it takes care of what we have done up to this point with Splunk, okay? So all that knowledge is reusable. And that's the beauty of this, is that we were really all this whole while, we were just trying to help scaffold the outside of Splunk, not change the way that you manage it today, because it's the same Splunk that you use today, right? So let me prove that before I talk your ear off all night. So as you can see, we have the operator's main goal is to teach Kubernetes about Splunk. Okay, that's the main thing I want you to take away. And so now let's look at what I have deployed to this Kubernetes cluster, because I'm able to do that now. So I'm going to go into that same repo that we have there, code user group. What am I got? London. Yeah. 2000. Okay, so what I literally just deployed there, I have given you the same code I run in my lab. So all I did was I did kube control apply this standalone YAML, and I was allowed to come in here and tweak some settings that are bare minimum settings, like which image of the container do I want to run, how much memory and disk should I allow this container to request. What hex token do I want, right? What apps do I want, right? Should I have HTTP enabled, etc.? And all I did was kube control apply. That YAML definition gets sent to the Splunk operator. And actually, here's a great image so that for the visual learners like me. So that YAML, and let me make this a little bit bigger. So that YAML, I ran, nope. Yeah, here. So that YAML that I just showed you, that file, I'm able to actually use it to send that configuration into the, sorry, I didn't mean to run the animation. Load that, bumbling around here for you. Oh, good old GDocs. Point is that you're able to take that, that actual simple YAML definition that, again, is fully spec'd out. You can read the specs here of all the common parameters, what they do, what they're used for. But I've given you a little cheat, a little head start. Like these are the ones you're going to need to get started, right? And when you send that YAML into the operator, what it does is it translates what you've put in that YAML into a Splunk deployment. Okay, and we can get into the nitty gritty later or during the 30 days about how the Go code mingles with the Ansible and like where's the you know the demarc points there. But those will come up as you get into different, you know, related concepts, and I would leave those for them. But for now, just know that I've asked the cluster to build me this, and what it did was, as you can see, you can take my word for it because I don't want to mess around too much. I want to get you guys out of here in a minute. But you can see that when I asked for this, what happened was the operator that's sitting right here received that request through Kubernetes, said, oh, it's time to run a Splunk pod. Matt wants a Splunk pod. So it spun up this Splunk dev standalone because I asked for a standalone. And it also spun up a monitoring console to manage that standalone. Okay. Now, I told you that you can't currently reach my instance from the internet right now but it is running. As you can see, if I go to the kube control and Splunk dev, and I just check out that Splunk pod that spun up, logs f standalone, what you'll see is, and I have a Istio pod in there too. So what you'll see is that the Docker image has run all those Ansible tasks that the YAML triggered because of my settings. And as long as the Docker image has reached this point, Splunk is running, right? And you're like, yeah, but Matt, how do I know? Like you said, I can't reach it from the internet. So how do I know you're not full of it? Well, the cool part is that as developers, sometimes we don't want to open it to the public because we're not ready for it yet. You know, we're not ready for the flood of traffic, or maybe we still have to secure things. So one of the cool things that we can do is we can access this cluster using a trick called port forwarding. So let me show you really quickly, and then we'll take a big breath and get you guys out of here. But I want to show you that my Splunk is running, and then I'll challenge you guys to go try and get your own Splunk running. So if I look in my history, grab, it's port forward. So just port. So the kube control, which is again, is that how we talk to the cluster, the Kubernetes cluster, has this really cool ability to do this port forwarding command. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my developer console, my laptop, to connect to this cluster, even though it's not exposed to the world. Okay, and we'll get into that later, how we're able to do that. But I give you a trick on how you're able to set this up using micro K8s. But let me just show you. So if I go Kubernetes get service, you can see that the Splunk operator has created us a bunch of things like services to connect to the cluster itself. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that kube control command, dev port forward to the actual service. And I got to tell Kubernetes that I'm trying to port forward to that service. And I'm going to use my local ports, like my local laptop, just to demonstrate this. And the reason I'm showing you this is because this is more realistic for developers, because load balancers cost money, right? And having like exposed IPs costs money and is a security risk, right? So the cool thing is that as you can see here, my operator's taken all the hard work. There's not really anything cool to show you, but what you can see is that by running that command, I can now actually reach a cluster that or a Splunk instance that was built for me essentially, and all I had to do was give it a couple of parameters. And so I'll log in here. So I'll show you. It's been so auto-generated for me that I don't even know the password. So I'm actually going to show you real quick how I retrieve the password, and then we'll wrap up here. So again, the operator took care of everything for me. So I'm going to go ask Kubernetes to show me any secrets that have been created in the namespace called Splunk Dev, and you can see that the operator took care of creating and syncing the secrets that I'm using. And so whether it's a standalone or whether it's a large cluster, syncing the secrets across the cluster is a pain. And so this is a really cool feature, and that's why I wanted to kind of just show it to you real quick before we get out of here. So I'm going to say get secrets, show it to me in YAML format, and you'll see what Kubernetes does is allows you to store secrets in a base 64 encoded manner. Now, this is like a demarc point. If you're in an enterprise, your vaults would be managing this, right? But for now, the operator is just managing it for me to make it easy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to decode that. So base echo and that base 64 string, base 64 -- decode. And this is now my Splunk admin password. And again, you can change the password through that central point, and the operator will manage it for you. But just so you can see that I wasn't messing with you, you can see that, oh, I gotta put that port forward back on, and then we'll wrap up here. So we'll port forward back to that service. And I'll go back to my Firefox. I will refresh, admin, password, and voila. You have a Splunk instance that was spun up in Kubernetes, managed by the operator, auto-installed a bunch of apps. And not only that, but I was able to enforce a couple of things that I wanted, like some indexes that I wanted to be present in the instance that should always be present, or hex tokens that are easy for developers to use, right? So if I go into my HTTP event collector, you can see that the operator took my request for that token that had all zeros and has taken that and deployed the instance. And sorry, the port forward is a little flaky. But again, remember, I wanted to get you to this point where you didn't need to go spend money on load balancers or learn Istio or whatever. Sometimes I just you have to, retry the search, especially when you're searching local hosts, it gets a little wonky. But the point is that the Docker, the Splunk image has been deployed with the custom hex token that I asked for, despite it having its own defaults that it'll show. And I'll let that load. It'll probably load in a minute. So anyway, point is, I've created a walkthrough for you to also use that exact same standalone config. Yeah, it looks something like this. I will leave docs in the actual repo for you to follow here, docs. Just give me, an hour or two to just clean them up. I have this getting started where you're literally going to go through, grab the image, do this, run this, press this, ta-da. So then at least at the very least, if you ping me on Slack, at least you get the container up, right? Hopefully you can at least get to this point right here, where you have a small little Ubuntu node running micro K8s, and you're able to see a little Splunk instance like this, where you have the operator pod running, you have a Splunk instance that you can play with the Docker image, and a monitoring console that's been automatically wired in. So I'm gonna stop there. That's where I would like to see folks try to get to, right? Like play with the repo, check out the Splunk Operator repo docs as well before you kind of really dive in with the repo that I provided. Like your first step should definitely be come to the Splunk Operator, come to the docs, and just read the getting started through, and then read the custom resource definition among other things here, and then I'll meet you in the Slack, I guess. I mean, I really just wanted to show you getting to this point. Of course, we can go through tons and tons of things like building multi-site cluster. What if I only want a search site cluster? What if I only want heavy forwarders? What if I only want this? What if I only want that? I promise we'll get to all of it, but running through this setup will have you better prepared for the things you'll get to know what you don't know yet, and then be able to branch out into these larger, more distributed, maybe I want 10 standalone instances to hand out to people. Maybe I want, you get the point, right? So I'm going to stop there. I know we probably kept you over, but here's what we're looking to get to. You're going to basically follow the instructions in the repo that I've given you that amount to installing a Ubuntu node with micro K8s, installing the Splunk operator, and then installing a Splunk instance. And then that's, hopefully we can get you all to there. And then over the next, 30 days, we can play around. And when we meet again, we can cover some of the more advanced items or stumbling blocks or places that people got stuck. Okay. So I'll take a break.
That's just unbelievable, Matt. Thank you so much for doing that. I mean, but now the beauty is we have our first example of running a Splunk Study Club, essentially, for 30 days. Yeah. And it looks like you're now empowering people to run their own little study club to help each other to move forward. So rather than we can focus on learning Splunk rather than focus on learning Kubernetes or focus on learning Linux. So this is really, really cool. We're jump starting people to get ahead. So it's what we live for. Thank you so much for your effort for presenting that to us this evening. That is just unbelievable. So just to remind everybody, there is our Slack channel. Yeah, pop in there. If you haven't been there before, you might need the longer URL to join the Slack channel. Matt's going to be there. We're all going to be there. We're all going to give it a go. Yeah, as much as like come back next month on the 20th, and then we can take it to the next level. Yeah, and we'll have hopefully some really good feedback for Matt and the team as well.
Yeah, go have your happy hour. Give me the evening. Like, come back tomorrow, Friday, read only Friday. We'll meet up in the Slack chat, and I'll make sure that the walkthrough is nice and clean and been vetted. So don't go banging yourself unless you want to, jump in right away and you're comfortable with things like Linux or Kubernetes. However, just like Aleem said, the idea is that you don't have to learn any of those things to get started. And not only that, this will help you then learn those things with a more pointed focus rather than just like learning Splunk. If you say, hey, I want to learn Splunk, it's like, damn, where do you even begin? And Kubernetes is a platform, same way. And so, like I said, this is not to make you all Kubernetes fans. This is to show you that is just a new tool in our arsenal that hopefully will, and we know it'll bleed into your data centers eventually. And so hopefully we can meet kind of on that horizon where, as you're migrating from traditional infrastructures to something more new school, that we have something for you to seamlessly kind of build into your repertoire. So.
That's brilliant. Any questions anybody wants to throw out there while we have the team on the call? That's cool. I mean, we still have 30 people. Can you believe it? Almost an hour and a half later. Unbelievable. Fantastic. I think this is just a huge number of people, hopefully getting some really good stuff from you here, Matt and the team.
I know it's hard because it's like a fire hose, and again, you don't know what you don't know yet, right? So like, I'm sure, and that's why thanks, Aleem. I think that it's brilliant the way you set this up, because we've done a bunch of sessions with the operator, but and even though people have been like, listen, I'm so glad you gave me that repo because I wouldn't have been able to catch up anyways. And you talk fast, and you sound sort of Canadian. It's weird, like you say words weird, and so at least in the code manner, hopefully you can run through it at your own pace. Get stuck where you get stuck. Don't be shy on Slack to reach out. But again, what we really tried to do here was to make sure you didn't have to live the life I had to live over the last 3 years, which is navigating bespoke through all of these universes. Now you can just reap the reward. You can reap what stole my hair, right? And make it not be in vain, right? And get started with it, and then hopefully just build on top of that without having to kind of go learn everything from scratch. And this can be a way for you to actually experience and learn some of these new things and make you look like a rock star with your new dev teams or your emerging technology teams, even if you're not, really running these things yet in the light of prod. So, and one last thing, as a Splunker, I have to get this out. I meet so many customers where our dev is prod. Okay. So again, one of the big things about this is, really trying to get around the hardships people have with procuring hardware or procuring places to run software. So, again, really just want to double down on, listen, you don't have to go all the way to production right now with this, even if you just finally have a lab, right? You know how many customers wouldn't, they wouldn't admit it here on camera, but, there is only one Splunk. There is no lab to play with. I can't just get my hands, dirty and then, raise it up to another lab. So if only that is what you get out of this for this year, then again, hopefully that's something you can look at as a benefit as well, right? So I really want to stress that yes, it's made for production. Yes, we want to run this for real, but there's other use cases that I think this will spider off and kind of birth, which I think are even more exciting, just to like get the word out there and get people's hands on it much faster, right?
Today's a big day. Planting some seeds there, Matt.
Trying. I'm trying to cultivate now. It's been 3 years, dude. It's like it's been 3 years for this boy. So yeah, I'm trying to like really get out there and get even more people out there. So don't be shy. I've kept you long enough. Splunk team, thank you for showing up. I know, Patrick and I did the talking, but take note of who visited, folks. You had some, legends among us, and they'll be around if we get any hard questions to help. So again, thank you so much. Thanks for letting us babble. And if you get stuck, don't be shy. Hit us up on the Slack.
It was therapy, every minute of it. Listen, thank you so much, everybody. I'll send the link out again for our session next month. It will be again a joint session with the Fort Worth user group ran by Suman. So hopefully we'll see you guys on May 20, and we'll see you in the Slack from now. Let's go have a good Splunk Study Club until then. And everybody have a great day, a great evening, and thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you guys and gals. And Have a good one.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone. See you. See you in the
Bye,
Slack.
everyone. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.